Hi, welcome to Arty Crafty Alchemy. Today I'm going to show you how to make your own wreath builder stencil. I'm the Arty Crafty Alchemist. Let's create some magic. You need a paper trimmer. I have my Fiskars paper trimmer here. You need a ruler. You need a sharp pencil. You need some small stamps. I have these daisy bucket stamps, nice small flowers. I have these Hero Art stamps, which can be 2-stamp with leaves. I have these that I've just gotten on a Facebook group. I have these Do Craft Creativity stamps. And I just have these Kaiser Craft stamps that you saw me haul a while ago. I thought I could use some of these for our centres. Any square dies will work. I've actually taken the biggest one of these so I could show you a bit more easily how to do it, but that will only work if you have a die cutting machine that will cut 8.5 inch wide by 8.5 inch. I have my stamp press and I've already pre-cut this piece with my paper trimmer to 8.5 by 8.5. And the Lifestyle Crafts, or now We Are Memory Keepers die, is 5.5 by 5.5. I have cut out 4 pieces of paper. You only really need 2. I just cut extra because I have a bad habit of mucking things up, so I just want to be prepared. And I'll show you what we're doing and why we are doing it. So this is a template I've already made to make sure it works. And then we have these that I've already stamped. This one's a bit dirty in the middle, but it doesn't matter because once you layer a die cut on top of it and add a sentiment, you can raise it up. You won't see that it's dirty in the middle. So this one's a very busy one where I've used lots of itty bitty stamps to make a wreath. Then we have this one where I've started with a big flower and just filled in the rest and gone all the way to the edges. And then this one is an itty bitty one that all I've done is stamp the branch and a couple of little flowers and kept that one nice and simple. And again, you can layer it up with a circle. That one's going to cover most of it, but you can use a smaller circle just to cover that little bit and put a tiny sentiment in the middle. Or if you keep it nice and clean, you can just stamp straight directly on there. This is what we are making. Okay, first of all, what we need to do is do diagonal lines. So we need to try and make them from corner to corner, and this will help us when we need to line up our die. Okay, now we need to measure 4 1/4 for this one. Because I'm doing 8.5, you need to measure 4 1/4. Again, 4 1/4 in the middle and 4 1/4 near the bottom. And the reason I am doing this is because in Australia it is very hard to get things like this from America, or prices are extremely expensive here. For example, I went to do an order at a company the other day and the post was going to be more than the items. So the items I wanted, $28. The post was $36, which is quite silly when you think about it. And it was a few dies, but they weren't huge die sets, so it wouldn't have been super heavy. So it just makes it hard to get things in Australia. So again, I've measured 4 1/4 all the way down. So when you do this, you want to take your die and you want to check the corners, and you want to, like, this one's only just going to fit under here, but we do have a bit of a lip which will give us a little bit more room. But you want to take your die and make sure you have a little bit of room around the edges so that your template's not going to fall apart. I'm using 300 GSM cardboard for this, but you can use chipboard, thin chip, whatever your die will cut through. A cereal box. If I didn't have this thick cardstock, I'd use a cereal box. We need our pieces of paper, and I'm showing you on green just so it shows up a bit better. And all I am doing is going to fold this one in half, and I'm going to make sure these two edges line up perfectly. Now because we've used a die, that shouldn't be too hard to do. Give that a score. And then we fold it the other way. Now the reason we're using the die is because we want to make 100% sure that this is square, and it's also going to help us line up the die for ourselves. So we have that one that we've folded on the diagonal. And now with this one, we fold it in half, making sure our edges and corners are straight and all lined up. That way it won't affect each step. Again, make sure everything is nice and square. Okay, now what I did last time was actually poked holes in it, and it was very messy. If you can see that, it was very messy. So what I'm going to do this time is actually take my smallest square die, and I'm just going to roughly put that in the middle of that one and try and line up the bits of this one, and I'm going to cut it out just so that we have our centre nice and square and easy to see, because it was very difficult to see with it done like this and the ratty edges. I kept having to make the holes bigger and things like that. So I'm just going to cut it this time. So I will be right back as soon as I've done the cutting. Okay, so we need to line up our folds. So you've got this in the middle, but it's not going to be in the middle if our lines are not lined up to this. So that's a good judge of whether you're in the middle or not. If it doesn't quite line up, then it's not quite in the middle yet. So you've got your inside guidelines and your outside guidelines. When you're happy with where it is, tape it down. So I'm using Post-it tape. I haven't found the thick stuff in Australia, so I've only got lots of this little stuff. And I haven't done an order where I've been able to buy the purple tape to try it out either. But I do like this thin stuff for these thin dies because you can just put a little bit on. So now that we have our tape on, we're going to take our die and we're going to put it over our cut piece. And make sure it's nice and snug. And then again, I'm going to take some tape. Use whatever tape you have, washi, purple tape, whatever you've got. This just happens to be what I have. And then tape your die in place. Now I'll be back after I cut this out. Whatever you do, do not throw out that centre piece because we still need it once we cut this. Okay, once you have die cut, you can peel up your tape. I'm going to use the same tape again. So now we remove that. We can remove this piece. We don't need that piece anymore. And we've got our piece still stuck in there. I'm just going to move a tiny piece of this tape to keep it in place. Okay, so now we have that bit taped in. We're going to take our diagonal piece of paper. And again, we line it up so that it's using these lines. And I can see just by looking in the centre that we're off centre. So the diagonal one is actually a little bit harder to get to line up. If you just play with it a little bit, you will get there. Okay, again, use some tape to hold your square in place and fit your die over the top and tape that in place. I would suggest cutting some squares the same size as whatever you're making your template out of cardstock or whatever you want to stamp on at the same time, just to save some time. And that way you're ready to play with your new template. We can now pop our back piece out. We don't need that anymore. That was just there so that we could use our centre lines. Now that we've popped that back bit out, we are ready to go and do our last bit of die cutting. So I'll be right back. Okay, now that we have done our last die cut, we have some leftover triangles from cutting our template. We just need to remove our die and the tape, and we are ready to make a project. I'm just going to give you quick measurements for what size this square is. It is 6 by 6, and the die that I have used is 3 3/4. But no matter what size you do, you just do the same thing. You measure the diagonal and then cut at least 3/4 of an inch, I think this is, bigger around the diagonal so that it's not going to break very easily. The good thing about the Tim Holtz platform is that unlike some of the other stamp platforms, you have a lot more area to work with, so this fits perfectly. But if you've got the travel Tim Holtz stamp platform and this hangs off the edge, that is perfectly fine as well. That is the good thing about the Tim Holtz platform. It doesn't matter what size your template is, it's going to work. Now, I generally put a magnet close to where I'm going to stamp. I'm trying to work out where I'm going to stamp. So I'll probably stamp in this corner just to make it easier. And then I use one of these on the piece in the middle. I have a couple of extra pieces. Place this piece in the middle here. He fits nice and snug because we've used the same die. And I'm going to choose my flowers. Now I have all those pretty leaves and flowers I showed you before. This size is a bit excessive. I will show you in comparison to the first one I did. It's way bigger. But one good thing about that is that you can actually cut it down and use the portion you want. You could cut the side off and use it as a card front if you wanted to, whichever side you wanted to cut off. And I'll show you my little hack for stamps. Some companies do this, but most don't. So this one didn't, and this stamp set likes to move about, as you can see. So what I do is I just take a strip of tape and stick it on one side and press it over to the other so that it keeps the two pieces together, because I am atrocious for losing these. So because we are doing a nice big one, I think I might take the big daisy. As you can see, the ones that I inked up yesterday are these small ones, but I might take this giant daisy here. So you just place your stamp where you want it, pick the colour you want, and we're doing sunflowers, so I might go for sunflower. Pick your stamp up, add some ink, and stamp. And if you don't like the impression you got, because you're using a stamp press, you can do it again. Now, the main thing with this is make sure your corner is always pushed as far into the corner as it will go. Everything's square. This is why I keep the magnet on it, to keep it nice and straight. And then I am just going to turn it. So we were here, and we're going to turn it to this one. And then we'll ink up again. Press down. And we have our stamped impression. That's the other thing I forgot to tell you. It's actually easier if you start by putting your stamp along one of these sides if you don't want it to go too far off the edge. Because if you start by one of these corner sides, you actually have more room to work, which means you could go off the edge like I almost did. So I'll show you that after we get our flowers done. I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is one of my favourite stamp tools ever. I wish they were invented years ago. I used the Stamp-A-Majig a couple of times, but that's just painful. And it doesn't work very well for acrylic stamps unless you're using a thick block. And I had the Tim Holtz blocks for a while. Now I have blocks of all different sizes, but I just love the stamp press. It's very rare that I actually use a block for stamping now, just because this gives so much better control. Okay, our last one, and each time we just move it that one little bit around to make sure that we get all 8 bits stamped. And there we have our beautiful flowers. I'm just going to take my stamp chamois and clean that. think I'm going to take this nice big leaf off this stamp set. Now remember what I said before about starting on the square edge. So I'm just going to put the square edge there. I'm going to move this across a bit to hold that in place in the right spot. And then I am going to add that there. And by doing it on a straight side rather than a corner first, it means all our stamps will be on the square instead of off. I'm just going to pick another colour. I am going to grab potting soil and leaf green. So I am going to ink up with leaf green, and then I'm going to take my potting soil and I'm just going to gently swipe the edges, and it doesn't matter if we get a little bit off, and then press down. So we get a two-tone leaf. Then again, a little turn. So you can clean between each one, or you can just go straight over the top because most of the ink would have transferred to the image. Again, we need to turn. I almost forgot, which wouldn't have mattered because we would have stamped in exactly the same spot. Bugs, 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 bugs. It's very hot here, so it's not supposed to be. We're usually cracking out our heaters about now in Australia, but someone forgot to tell Mother Nature that it was autumn. Okay, so go around again. Now the good thing about doing this too is that you can fill in as much as you like. You can, if I want to, I can add more to this. If I don't want to, I can just leave it with these stamps and flowers. And again, I can raise that up to stick in the middle, or I can stamp straight in the middle if I don't make a mess, which would be a miracle because I'm a messy crafter. So oh, I didn't get a lot on the edges of that one, but that's alright. We want them all to look a bit different anyway. And you just keep going around 8 times until it's done. Now I know Jennifer McGuire has a really good tutorial on this. She showed how to do masking, which I don't actually have masking tape to be able to mask, and I don't have the thick post-it. She showed how to add words, use words with this. I'm just trying to see if there's something I'd like to use to fill some bits in. Now I've decided I'd like a butterfly in each corner. So I am just going to line up this butterfly. Then I am going to pick it up and I am going to decide what colour. I think I might go for Paradise Teal. Wasn't sure what colours I was going to use, so I actually got out a lot of colours to try. I've got my minis and then I've got a few big pads out as well. Now this time you want to double turn so that you only stamp the corners. So you skip one space and go to the next one. So like this. Normally when we're going all the way around we'd move here, but instead we just go straight to this one. And that way we can just stamp our corners. And again, straight to the corner. And of course, if you think you're making a mistake with the stamp press, you can just look and see if it's in the right spot. For example, if I'd had it this way, just take it down slowly and go, okay, that's not where I want to stamp. I need to move it and move it around. And then you can stamp in the correct spot. And again, if that, because I'd waited so long, if that had been a bit dry and hadn't wanted to stamp, I could have just stamped it again because we're using a stamp press. So there we have that one. And I might add a sentiment in the middle. But I am going to turn it this way. And I'm just going to add that to the corner. And I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to take my jet black. Now if you don't like the gap around that, fill it in with some more flowers, more bits and pieces. I have these little butterflies that I might add. So we may add some itty bitty butterflies now. So I quite like that, but why not add more if you want to? So I'm going to add it to every flower. Sorry if you can hear the noise outside. Next door's got some music going. I'd love to see what everybody makes with these. I just saw it and wanted to try it out, and postage is so expensive here and it takes a long time sometimes. Like it could take a couple of weeks or it could take a couple of months to get here, so you never actually know. So what do you think? If you make one, let me know and show me what you make with it, please. I'd love to see. It's just fun, and once you've got it set up, you could make 2 or 3 cards the same at the same time if you had to make a bulk lot of cards, or you could make as many cards as you needed to. You could make 20 of these once you've got it set up and you've got all the pieces cut that you need to use. You can just repeatedly stamp one sheet after the other, do one, take it out, go on to the next one. You could do the same stamps but in different colours to mix it up. So it's a very versatile tool to make really easy cards once you have the tool set up to do it. I hope this tutorial helped you. If you have any questions, head over to my blog and shoot me a message and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching. Go create some crafty alchemy yourselves and I'll see you later. Bye.